The A2A Simulations release of the Aerostar 600 is only the second aircraft released by this developer for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 or 2024. The aircraft feature Accu-Sim, their own bespoke modelling of the environment around you, sounds and flight model. Its purpose is to bring greater realism to your flight experience. The quality of the texturing and modelling is in line with what you'd expect from other leading developers. Aerostar 600 is very distinctive in terms of its shape and size, and of course its clamp-style door. Their first release, the Comanche 250, was a phenomenal achievement, and in my personal opinion, rates right up in the top 3 GA aircraft for the sim. When A2A Simulations release an aircraft, well, expectations are high, and the question we want to answer in this video is, does it live up to expectations? Welcome everybody to the Sim Hangar. My name's Mark. Thanks very much for watching, and let's get started by closing the door. And the best way to test it is take it for a flight from startup to shutdown. The InSim tablet allows you to configure various setup and configuration detail and doubles up as an EFB, or via the EFB directly and selecting the A2A tab. Here you'll find flight parameters, conditions, checklists and so on. We'll take it that our pre-flight's completed, and we'll take away those chocks, tie-downs and remove the pitot cover. You have the option to enable persistence. That means you'll find the aircraft in the state that you left it, thus enabling realistic wear and tear, as well as the frequency of failures if you want to. In addition to the default GNS 530 and 430, you can utilize various third-party products. Today I'm using TDS's GTN 750 and 650. You can set fuel and weight parameters. There's also a maintenance tab, but we'll have a look at that in a little bit more detail once the engines are started. I will be more or less following the checklist, but inevitably I'm going to forget something along the way. So before start, let's go through our checks. Parking brake is on, battery and all our switches are off, left fuel is off, and our gear indicator is down. I'm just working across the cockpit left to right. We want both our prop levers fully forward. Test and check. Right fuel is in the off position. And our hydraulic valve is open. That's it there. We're nearly done now. Flaps are in the up position. That's correct. Just hide the co-pilot's yoke while we check the circuit breakers. And in typical A2A fashion, all the circuit breakers are operational and functional. Make sure none of them are popped out. We're ready. We can now bring the cockpit to life, and initially let's put on the battery switch. The cockpit sounds are absolutely wonderful, and we've got 3 green for gear down. I'm using live weather today, so let's set the baro, and that's currently 30.04 inches of mercury. There we go, that's set. If we just take a quick glance at the wet compass in the cockpit, we can see that our HSI is not aligned. So it's always a good idea to do this early. This is the heading bug. Press it in to realign the HSI and rotate as necessary. Currently our heading's about 327 or thereabouts, so we'll just dial that in. I think that's just about it. Now I can turn on our beacon light to let people know that there's someone in the cockpit and we'll be starting up soon. You'll note that I'm using various peripherals to control various gauges, switches and so on. Down on the pedestal I can just check that the trims are in the neutral position. Elevators are a little bit nose down from my last flight, so just adjusting that to bring them back to neutral. We're done here. We're about ready for start, so a quick check on the fuel. Wingtip and fuselage tanks showing as expected. We're flying VFR today over the Yosemite National Park. Plenty of fuel. Check the annunciator panel, make sure all's working, and no low fuel is being indicated. All good here. Well, time to get these engines started. We're going to start with the right engine and crank the throttle. Just an inch or so. Right fuel open. Makes a whirring sound as it starts up. I'm also going to open the left-hand valve. And now the right-hand side boost pump. This is electrically operated. I found these engines can be difficult to start at times. The way I do it is the right-hand mixture fully open for a few seconds, then fully closed. Right-hand mag to both. Then to start, let it turn over a few times, then push the throttle and mixture fully forward until she catches, then bring that throttle back. We have right-hand engine start. I'm pulling the right-hand throttle back so that we can idle at in and around 1000 RPM. We need to give the time for the engine to warm up. We don't want to run the battery down, so right-hand alternator to on. We can now go ahead and put on our nav lights, and we no longer need our booster pump, so that can come off for now. And now we repeat the process for the left-hand engine. Booster pump is on. Just going to push the mixture control for the engine all the way forward just for a few seconds and then back to cut off. And crank the throttle again. And follow the same startup procedure with the throttle and mixture as we did for the right-hand engine. Quick cross-check here that all our PNTs are as they should be and in the green. And left alternator to on. Annunciator panel should now be clear. Daylight is breaking quite quickly, but I'm just going to put the cabin lights on. We can always turn them off again if we don't need them a bit later on. And once again, boost pump off. Check fuel pressure, all okay. The mechanical pumps are doing their job. With both engines running, we just want to check the gyro. Pressure should be between 4.5 and 4.8, that's what's running our steam gauges, and check that our battery is reading 28 volts. Engine temperature's just moving into the green. Time to put on our avionics master switch and bring everything to life. Garmin TDS 750 and 650 booting up. To the right of that is our EDM or our engine data management displays. You'll see that I'm operating the GTN 750 remotely from my cockpit, not using my mouse, just using the mouse for the 650, as I'm running it on the Flight Sim Builder G1000 multi-display with touchscreen. Video on my channel if you want to know more. Just going ahead now and loading the flight plan, which I've already stored on the GTN 750. There it is, that's the one I want. I'm just going to go ahead and activate that. And it will concurrently load the flight plan into both the 750 and 650. What I like to do is run the map display on the 750 and the flight plan on the GTN 650. Nice and easy for quick reference while you're flying. Now, of course, a wealth of information is literally at your fingertips. Transponder has been set for VFR, and we can quickly have a review of our intended flight plan. Departing from here, Columbia. I'm going to be departing on about a heading of 130 degrees, flying over Pine Mountain Lake Airport, then turning on a heading of approximately 70 degrees to our final destination, which is 0 or Oscar 24, not sure how you say Leavining or Leavining, in the Yosemite National Park. Quite a bit of high ground to cover, so we're going to be climbing to an altitude of 13,500 feet. Before doing an expedited descent for our final destination and landing. Also going to turn on the Collins DME. Although we're not using any VORs today, you have both nav1 and nav2 DME indicator. I'm simply going to use it as the clock today. I'm also going to turn on the autopilot master switch. That's it here. This doesn't activate the autopilot, just enables it. We're having a look at the autopilot once we're up and away. Displays very much as Flight Director would. We're at a little over 2,000 feet at the moment. If you're going to be stationary for some time, it's always a good idea to bring back your mixture a little bit while you idle. Just stop those plugs from fouling up. We will do a run-up today, but we're going to taxi a little way to our departure point before doing so. Almost ready for taxi now. Let's put on our pitot heat. By selecting the left-hand button on the EDM, you can rotate through various modes. I'm looking for a fuel stroke mixture indicator of gallons per hour. This will help me later on to lean for best performance. Now I'm going to bring back my yokes. First the co-pilot and then the pilot, and we can check that all our controls are free and clear for both our ailerons and our elevator, and I'm just going to test the rudders as well. Make sure everything's operating as it should. That's looking pretty much all okay. We're ready to taxi, but before we do, we want to bring up the in-aircraft tablet once again. Now we can just take a quick look at the maintenance tab for the Piper Aerostar 600. Under the airframe tab, a multitude of different options are available, including the ability to inspect and also wash your plane. Yes, as you use it, it accumulates dirt and grime. You can also inspect the engines by component, both engines 1 and 2. Anything faulty will be highlighted. Then you've got engine analysis or analyzer, again by engine 1 and 2. With the engines running, you get a graphic showing both flow and temperature, and lastly you can have a look at the electrical systems to ensure they're all functioning as expected. Nice attention to detail from A2A. Once you've checked seatbelt and harnesses, windows and doors, release the parking brake, little bit touch on the brakes, just make sure they're operational, and at last we're on our way. This aircraft doesn't need much encouragement to get going. Keep your eye on the throttles and feet near the brakes, otherwise she'll run away from you fairly quickly. There is a steering switch, but I'm not using that today. It's a very short taxi, so we'll just line up here and we're going to do our run up without using the steering switch. The ground handling itself is fairly generic. Accu-Sim coming into play here with creaks and cracks and bangs, just increasing the whole level of immersion. Beauty, as they say, is in the eye of the beholder, and to me, well, this is not a pretty plane, but looks aren't everything. If this was a child, well, you'd have to hang a pork chop round its neck so the dog could play with him. But we're not interested in the beauty, we're interested in how she flies. We're just going to stop here and do the run up, parking brake on. I'm going to push the throttles forward to 1500 RPM. The engine should respond quickly to the input. 1500 now recording on the RPM gauge for both engines, and we can do a quick check, make sure we've still got 28 volts. Yes, we have. That's all looking good. Now advance the throttles once again, and we're looking for 2100 or 21 on the RPM gauge so we can exercise the props. Keeping our eye on the RPM gauge, we want to pull the props right back but not into feather till the RPM hits round about 1000 RPM and then push them forward again. Normal procedure to do this 3 or 4 times. As part of the run-up, you would also check the magnetos left and right and look for a drop in the RPM with the props fully advanced, but I'm going to skip that today as the setup I have today only has one ignition switch which controls both engines. Now the operation of the flaps is quite interesting. You have up, down and neutral. Set any flaps from the neutral position, flap indicator to the right of the lever. I want 20 degrees of flaps for departure today, so I'm going to move it into the down position, watch the indicator till it gets to about 20 degrees or thereabouts, then move it back to the neutral position. So the amount of flap that you can set is almost infinitely graduated, very handy indeed. Bring the throttles back and we're ready to taxi. ATC has given us clearance to line up for our runway. We can now go ahead and put our strobe and landing lights on, parking brake off, and let's head to the runway. To make things a little bit more interesting, we won't be using the main runway. Just off to the side slightly is a grass strip, and we're going to use that for takeoff. Winds are very light at just around about 2 to 3 knots, so that's not going to be a problem for us. And we'll find the second grass runway just across the main runway. There it is, we can see it here. Keep my speed under control as there's a bit of a dip down. Conscious I don't want a prop strike. Then we'll bring ourselves to a stop and do our last minute checks. This is our last opportunity to identify any errors or problems. It's time well spent, even though we're anxious to get away. Holding her on the foot brakes, time to put our boost pumps on, both left and right. I can hear them whirring away. Another quick check on our trims, they're looking okay. PNTs all seem to be in the green and looking alright. Seatbelts on, sick bags at the ready. Going to advance the throttles to about 2000 RPM, then release on the brakes, and slowly but surely advance the throttles to full. We're rolling, looking for 85 to 90 knots for rotation. rotate and we're up. We're going to climb to a safe altitude and then we're going to do a left-hand turn to get ourselves back on track. Reducing my rate of climb to keep my speed up. Gear up. Aerostar feels a little nose heavy. Holding runway heading until I finish the cleanup. And flaps up as well. We've now climbed about 500 feet and coming back on the props. I don't want to overstress the engines. I'm going to pull it back to about 24, thereabouts, not more. And initially I'm going to do exactly the same on the throttles, coming back to something in the region of about 24 manifold pressure. Now trimming my nose down, rate of climb's a little too high and I need a little bit more airspeed. As we begin our left-hand turn. We're more or less coming over the airport again, so I'm just going to start my clock. Climbing at about 1,000 feet per minute. Speed just coming over 140 knots. And both the left and right hand boost pumps can now come off. Cast your eye over the PNTs again, looking for any anomalies. Going to keep my landing lights on till around about 10,000 feet. Just passing 4,000 feet and coming back on the mixture, leaning the engine to accommodate for the increasing altitude. As mentioned, we're going to climb to 13,500 feet today. Best rate of climb is 122 knots. Now engaging the autopilot. Autopilot setting is for heading and attitude, so it will maintain the current pitch, but conveniently retains response to trim commands. I'm now trimming nose up 4,000 feet per minute. Some fairly high ground ahead of us, but we got plenty of time for the climb. We don't need maximum climb for this route. This model of the Aerostar is a late 70s or early 80s model, so the autopilot functionality is fairly basic. Attitude will determine your rate of climb or descent, then hit the Alt key once you reach the desired altitude. It also has a nav mode and can follow a GPS. If I have a quick look at the flight plan, we can see that the heading that we require for this leg is 130 degrees. GTN 750 is in VLOC mode, and using the course dial I can dial in 130 on the HSI. Our actual heading at the moment is due east about 90 degrees. There we are, course needle pointing 130 degrees. On the GTN 750 we can now turn back to map mode. We should be fairly close to the magenta line by now. There we are. And I've set the GTN to GPS mode now. Speed now 160 knots. So now if you look at the HSI, you'll see the deviation bar moving as we cross over the magenta line. Now adjusting my heading, I'm still in heading mode to get myself back on track. Like most of the older autopilots, before engaging the nav mode as GPS, it's better to get yourself more or less lined up on track. Otherwise you're going to find yourself weaving left and right as the GPS struggles to adjust quickly to get you back on track. We're continuing our climb, just passing 6,000 feet, 160 knots. Using heading mode to bring myself more or less back on track. We're almost there now, so now I can switch to nav mode. And the aircraft will now follow the magenta line, just as you would normally expect it to do. Nav mode now engaged. We'll now continue the climb to 13,500 feet. As we gain altitude, we'll need to push the throttles all the way forward to maintain airspeed. We're continuing our climb and just coming up on 9,000 feet. That early morning sun is quite bright and just a little blinding. However, this aircraft has interactive sun visors, so we're going to use those. Just hope they're big enough. They should be alright. There we go, that's a little bit better and easier on the eyes. We're now coming up on the top of climb, 13,500 feet. Props have remained at 24, throttle is full, landing lights off at 10,000 feet. Now further lean the mixture back to about 11.3 gallons per hour. As we hit the 13,500 feet, I'm going to press the Alt key. There we go. And nose should come down and she will now level off. with a corresponding increase in speed. We're now at cruise. The EDM gauge itself has a variety of functions and features that can help you lean to best consumption for any given altitude. We're now about halfway through our flight. We're going to stay at cruise for a while and then start a fairly rapid descent. But until that time, we can just enjoy the absolutely wonderful scenery for this part of the world. I have no idea how realistic the engine sounds are. This may very well be what the Aerostar sounds like, but the engine noises themselves, well, they do seem a little generic to me. Maybe it's just me, they sound a lot better on the ground than they do up in the air. But I'm not saying they're wrong, just not what I expected. And what did I expect? Well, perhaps something a bit more throaty and reverberating. Well, we're just about to pass our last waypoint and then on to our final destination. So now's a good time for us just to review the remainder of the flight and plan our arrival. We've got about 16 nautical miles to go. Our final destination of Leeuwining, Oscar 24, has an altitude of 6,786 feet and the runway is just under 4,000 feet long. Once over the high ground, we're going to start a descent, then fly a pattern over the island in the middle of the lake, turn on base, and then for a visual approach runway 15. We'll want an initial descent to about 9,000 feet. We're going to have to descend not too fast, but we're going to need something in the region of about 1,500 feet, and we'll start our descent as soon as the high ground allows us to. 13 nautical miles to go. A quick check on our P&Ts. That's all looking fine. Cross check, flaps in the up position. Yep, that's good. There's no ILS or nav aids for the approach. Not a problem, we are flying VFR and switch to heading mode as we fly over the snow-capped mountains. We'll be flying directly over the airport initially. Time to start our descent, and to do that we're going to change from altitude to attitude on our autopilot controls here. Then I'm going to start trimming down. I want a descent rate between 1,000 and 1,500 feet initially, pulling back on the throttles as necessary so I don't overspeed. Needing a fair amount of trim, pulling back on the throttles now. We can see the manifold pressure decreasing. No need to lose too much speed at this point. Still got a fair distance to go, and we'll shortly be flying directly overhead Oscar 24, which I believe is a popular tourist destination for those wishing to visit this national park. Airport dead ahead. As we commence the descent, we're going to lose altitude relatively quickly, so just going to richen the fuel mixture a little bit by moving the levers forward. Also going to trim down just a little bit more. I need a slightly faster rate of descent. Speed will pick up a little bit, so I just come back a little bit more on the throttles, but I want to stay in the green. I don't want the engines cooling too quickly. This aircraft reacts very nicely to trim input, it appears. The Aerostar 600 I find is relatively easy to fly. Not as challenging, perhaps, as the Comanche 250 is. The design of the wings has maximum cruise speed in mind, which means the compromise was a little bit in terms of its takeoff and landing ability. You need to keep mindful of the required airspeed. As we continue our descent, I mentioned earlier that the aircraft collects dust and dirt, and a bit of oil splatter by the looks of it, and we can see this on the wing and on the engine housing. Very nice effect, love it. If you have persistence mode enabled, well, you're going to need that washman option. We're now turning on our downwind leg and we're coming up on our initial approach altitude of 9,000 feet. When we reach 9,000 feet, I'm going to press the Alt button. This will level her off and we'll start to reduce airspeed, ready for our visual approach runway 15 at Oscar 24. Alt mode on the autopilot now engaged. We've continued to manage our approach and we're now on base. Speed now starting to wash off and we will then engage 10-degree flaps. Lovely calm and clear day today. Gentle breeze 3 to 4 knots with some scattered cloud. Just a few nautical miles now to touchdown. We're about to turn on final flaps at 10%. Speed at 140 knots. Still need to wash off a little bit of speed, so great opportunity to put our gear down now. Autopilot is off and we're hand flying it in. And the airport should be just to our left. Yes, there it is. Might be a little bit late on the turn, so slightly sharper turn now. Speed coming back to 120 knots, which is what I'm looking for initially. Then I'm going to add some more flap. I believe there's some freeware scenery at flightsim.to for our destination today. Must have a look at it. The airport just coming into sight. Yes, I've been a little bit late on the turn, but plenty of room and altitude to make that adjustment. Coming up on 8,000 feet. Speed 120 knots. Flaps now down to 20%. Both left and right boost pumps now need to come on, and our landing lights need to come on as well. Just over 2 nautical miles to run. Now I'm going to start slowing to approach speed, which I want to be about 100 knots. Now I'm going to put the flaps full down. I'm a little high, and the flaps will help me with my descent as I complete my final lineup. Gear down 3 green. Flaps are down, landing lights on, boost pumps on. Both mixture levers can now be pushed all the way forward to full rich. I said about a half-hour flight, looks like I'm dead right. And for the very final phase of landing, I'm going to push the prop levers all the way forward as well, but not totally sure if that's the correct process or not for this aircraft. But as common practice, so I'm going to do it here. I want to come over the threshold at about 90 knots, and I'm not really going to do a full flare, just sort of hold her level and let her sink down onto the runway. Flaps away. Parking is at the other end of the runway, so just letting it run on. Very gentle touch on the brakes. And we're down safe and sound. We can start with our after landing checklist. Flaps are up and boost pumps now left and right can come off. As we slow to taxi speed, we can bring back our mixtures so that we don't foul up the plugs. And we're going to take this exit to the right here and taxi to parking. Well, overall I would say an uneventful but enjoyable trip in the latest offering from A2A Simulations. Now clear the runway so we can take the landing lights off so we don't blind people as we taxi to our parking, and I hope you enjoyed the flight. So what are my impressions overall? Well, I think by any standard this is a good aircraft. Has a considerable depth to it. We can take our strobe lights off, cabin heat, and we're also going to turn off our pitot heat. We don't need that anymore. But for me, there's something missing and I don't quite know what it is. It just doesn't feel as alive as the Comanche. Somehow not quite as tactile. Is it me or the aircraft? But it lacks pizzazz. Not really a criticism, it's just a feeling that I have. I like the aeroplane very much, but I'm not overly excited by it. But then again, that's probably just me. Now this aircraft has just been released and I'm sure Accu-Sim and other factors will get updates, and overall it's inevitable that the product will improve and mature with age. Now some of you may feel that my comments are unfair, but I'm just being honest, and bear in mind that this is $50 for this aircraft, and for that price I am quite right and fair in having very high expectations, and it hasn't quite reached those, to be perfectly honest with you. As updates come out and things improve, if my opinion changes, I won't hesitate to do another video on this aircraft. But for now, it is what it is. As always, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found it useful and informative. Stay well, look after yourselves, see you soon, captains, and ciao for now.